Alright, there we go. Stream's up. And we're back. We're back in this... We're back in this fucking shithole, I'm not gonna lie. Shut up, Merle. Alright. Honestly, plan for today, just gonna do our best.
You've met.
Lord knows. I need my best. And while we're here, might as well talk to Sabrina. No, that's at level 10. Never mind, we won't talk to Sabrina. She's a bitch. You know what? We need some fucking music. This is gonna be locking music. Music volume gone. I'm doing this while I'm still sick, so I will have to probably cough away from the mic.
Beware.
The issue is, I know that the whole thing of me doing the Wizlocke is the fact that it's content. I'm gonna be real. I don't know how to make a stream interesting. I don't even watch streams. The fuck is in my deck? Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I don't watch streams. Like, I watch stream clips where it's like, oh, something interesting happened within like the 4 hours someone was streaming. So I've been thinking we should have a topic of conversation for streams. Or not really a topic of conversation, because that implies I'm talking with someone else. More so, there should be a topic that I just start babbling on about. And maybe that makes for good content while I'm getting my dick slammed by this, like, 15-year-old game.
You are now commanding your pet, allowing
What
you to get
we're gonna talk about today is brisket and smoking and barbecue. Because, fuck you, I want to. Alright. So, first things first. Type of smoker. So, generally, when it comes to smokers, you have a lot of different smokers. You've got drum smokers. You have like
now that your pet
it's like you see them a lot in like actual barbecue restaurants. It's like a big square, like it's like a vault. It's like a big vault, but thinner, and they have ribs on like a rotating. Like a Ferris wheel. It's a rib Ferris wheel. I mean, you've got a ton of different types of smokers, but they're not all, you know, some are more common than others, for sure. You can also make your own smoker. Generally speaking, what you're looking for with a smoker is you have a heat source that is away from your meat. It's not actually in direct contact. It's not the one that is heating your food. You really just want the smoke and heat kind of away and traveling over your food. Now, when it comes to smokers that you'll find available to you at your local, you know, Home Depot or Lowe's, it's typically offset smokers or pellet smokers. Alright, so basically you have pellet smokers and you have offset smokers. Now, fundamentally, they do the same thing, but the biggest difference is the type of fuel that goes into both. With pellet smokers, you're feeding pellets, which are little things about this big. They're little, like, bits of compressed wood, usually, that, you burn in a fire that creates smoke, and it travels over the food and heats it up. That's what a pellet smoker is. A offset smoker does essentially the same thing. However, an offset smoker, instead of using pellets as fuel, it's typically charcoal and wood. And you're actually like burning the wood, and that's what's producing smoke. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to both. There's pros and cons. Big thing for pellet smokers, that's gonna be, you know, Traegers. To be fair, a lot of different manufacturers have gotten into the pellet smoker, you know, market. So not just Traeger. Traeger is probably one of the more well-known manufacturers in the space, but they are far from the only one, and you should definitely look for, you know, what is in your budget and what suits you, because Traegers can be kind of pricey. They also sell a lot of add-ons, but those add-ons are also quite pricey as well. Now, thing with something like a Traeger is that there is little that you actually have to do with a smoker like that. It's honestly more so like an oven. It's a big oven where you tell this machine what temperature you want it at, and the machine knows it's been programmed to use however many pellets it needs to maintain that temperature. So you're really just interacting with, you know, like a dial or like an interface in order to cook your food. And this is good for people that don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time at their smoker. They want to, you know, they want to put meat in the smoker, they want to turn it on, they don't really mind how long it takes, and they'll come back to, you know, some good brisket. And the downside of a pellet smoker is generally that excuse me, sorry. The downside to a pellet smoker is generally that because pellets are the way they make pellets is that they're basically dry, compressed pieces of wood, just kind of like macerated wood, and they burn very well. That's the thing, they burn very well. But what you have to understand with cooking, or with smoking specifically, is that you don't want it to burn super clean. Super clean produces very little smoke. It produces heat, but very little smoke. And, you know, that's what you're looking for when you're smoking food. And they still provide some smoke, but the smoke flavor is definitely weak because the pellets burn cleaner. And so, for the sake of convenience, you are sacrificing smoke flavor. Now, you're not sacrificing that much smoke flavor. It's not so much that, you know, it's a deal breaker. You can still make very good barbecue with a pellet smoker. But if you're looking for really good flavor, it's not gonna be on a pellet smoker. That's where something like an offset comes in. But the offset has its issues too. Alright, so offset produces very good smoke flavor, but it also is a fucking second job. Alright, you have to keep an eye on your smoker. You have to keep an eye on it. You have to monitor it. You have to, when you make like any food on an offset smoker, you have to be with the offset smoker. You can't leave it alone too much. Because I mean, it's an open flame, and you have to gauge how much fuel it needs. You have to gauge, you know, are these pieces of wood suitable for a smoker of this size? That's really hard to do. It takes a while to get the sense of how hot your smoker is running, when you should put more fuel on. You know, you have to deal with, you know, like the vents on an offset smoker. Typically, I would just use the whole door as like a big vent. I don't really like fiddling like a small ass metal door on like a bigger door. It just doesn't make sense to me. I remember going to to my local Home Depot, and they had, I believe it was an Oklahoma Joe smoker that they had. They had not exactly like a door that you like swing, but like it had this like sliding mechanism to control the amount of air that was going into the smoker, and it just worked terribly. It got stuck, like, and this was something that's brand new. This is something that hasn't been used. So it's like, if it doesn't work now, like, God, if I bring it home, I'm gonna be so annoyed with it. So, yeah, if you're doing an offset smoker, goddamn.
Is that everything?
Yeah.
Good. Please don't bother me
Door,
again.
like, it's such a pain in the ass fiddling with a small metal piece of shit. Alright, now where was I? Oh, okay. So, yeah, offset smoker is definitely superior smoke flavor, but much harder to manage. Especially for something like a brisket. Brisket can be on the smoker from anywhere from 12 hours to 16 hours, depending on the size of the meat, the temperature you're smoking at. It can really just take a long time, and you could be there for ages. So, very clear upsides and downsides to both types.
Let's see if
I think
nothing.
They make
there's also a case to be made with electric smokers. Electric smokers are, I've been seeing these more often lately, especially lately, because I believe GE came out with an electrical smoker that you could have on your countertop, and that would it takes pellets, and in order to like avoid like a fire hazard, what it does is it uses like once the pellets are on fire and the meat is done, essentially, the pellets will drop into like a cup of water that you fill up beforehand, and it will extinguish them, and that's how they keep it safe. I'm assuming they have like, they might also have a way to like keep food warm, so like you could actually rest your meat once it's done. And I think those are actually like pretty good for just kind of like they're good for people that can't have a smoker, either like in their yard or for people that are living in apartments. I think it's it's good for those kinds of people. I still think though the smoke flavor from that isn't it's definitely not as good as something off of even a normal pellet grill or a offset. And so I would really only recommend it if you were living in an apartment or just otherwise could not have a big smoker, because it is after all a pretty hard thing to like accommodate for, especially in like a smaller house. You definitely have to have it outside because there's a risk of carbon monoxide poisoning after all, because you're using charcoal and you're burning wood, so it's always dangerous. But I would always go for something like an offset if I wanted flavor. Now, what you're gonna want to do once you have a smoker is you're gonna want to do a burn in, because that will get rid of like any kind of like chemical residue that happens to be on the smoker. They come out of these factories. These factories aren't like, they're probably not the cleanest. So you do a burn in. You gotta burn away all the crap. And once that's done, you're gonna want to season your smoker. Now, typically cheaper smokers that you'll see, these are the ones you'll find at like Home Depot or Lowe's. They tend to have very thin metal, and usually like painted metal. The paint is there to prevent weathering, but I find that even just for like shorter cooks, the paint tends to like come off of the smoker and the metal starts to warp, because it's also usually a very thin steel, which you want from a smoker, like a good steel. I'm talking like one that you can just like use and abuse for years on end, is 1/4 inch thick steel. That's what you're looking for, because that kind of steel, it's thick enough that when it's heated to these degrees that you're hitting with your smoking for long periods of time, it's not going to warp. It'll hold its shape. These cheaper ones, they have these coatings, but they tend to warp and like it'll like separate from the coating. It's really not great. If you want to have an easy way of seasoning your smoker, that's going to be that's going to be something like linseed oil. Linseed oil is used very often for seasoning these kinds of like smokers. I would say try your best to get like raw linseed oil, because boiled linseed oil tends to have a lot of like it has like metal shavings, which may or may not have a detrimental effect on like your health. I just personally would recommend not using boiled linseed oil. Try to get raw linseed oil if you can. When you're seasoning with linseed oil, you actually don't need to have the smoker hot. Because a big thing with linseed oil is that it polymerizes at ambient temperature. It'll polymerize at like room temperature. So, like a lot of times when you're seasoning something, like a cast iron pan is something that I think most people would season, or it's like the thing that people would season. Cast iron pans typically need to have a neutral oil rubbed onto them, like a layer of neutral oil, and at that point they will heat it up in the oven to make that oil break down and form polymers, making a non-stick surface a non-reactive surface. So it's the same idea with a smoker, but you're using linseed oil, because linseed oil will form polymers at ambient temperature, at room temperature, so it's really good. You can just slap that on. It's great. I probably got a lightning strike into a pixie is my guess, because he does have 2 pins. Now, so that's seasoning, that's the burn-in. Make sure you don't... I typically wouldn't use, like, the big chunks of wood that you find, or, like, the kind of smokers that you would find at, like, Home Depot or Lowe's. Because when you're buying wood, when you're buying cooking wood, typically, the wood you find, when you ask for a log, there'll be like big fuck-off logs that, you know, what... Oh, I fucking hate accuracy spells. Can I just say? I fucking hate these spells. With a passion in my fucking heart. These spells suck. Why do they proc off any other spell? It's so ass. Okay, back to my point. So, the logs you get in a bag to put in, that you would like to put in a smoker, typically are just too big. You can use them, definitely, but you're gonna run into a situation where the log, if it's wet enough, it won't ignite fast enough. It will take a long time to ignite. It'll smolder. It'll create dense, gross, thick, white smoke that you just don't want. You don't want that. That's gross. What we're after is thin, wispy, like almost greasy. That's what we want. So, fuck, I'm gonna die to hunger. So what I recommend is, if you have power tools, just like cut down the log like lengthwise. So you have just like a thinner log, it'll catch easier. You'll save yourself a lot of headache when you're putting a log on the fire and just billowing out. You don't want that. So once you got the wood in hand, now let's talk about the actual food. Let's talk about prep. So, brisket is, number one, quite a fatty cut. It's the pectoral muscle. It's actually 2 muscles. There's the point half, and there is the flat half. But it's like the pectoral area of the cow. It's a very fatty cut, and it's very tough. What you're doing with brisket is essentially you are trying to overcook the brisket enough that it becomes tender. I'm not really sure who in their right mind like found this out, but to make a brisket tender, we found out somehow that you want to severely overcook it. That is what makes brisket so tender. And so, what you're gonna do is you want to make the brisket aerodynamic. That sounds weird, I sound like I'm talking about cars, but the big thing about Traeger, or not Traeger, pellet grills and offset smokers is that they rely on convection. They rely on air current moving throughout the whole thing, and heat moving and smoke moving. You want the brisket to be aerodynamic in order for the heat and the smoke to easily go over the food and heat it and apply like smoke flavoring to it. So typically that involves cutting the brisket into essentially an oval shape. You want like a roughly oval shape of the brisket. Typically the mohawk, I will just trim the entire thing off, because a lot of it is just fat, and even if it wasn't just fat, a lot of it is just gonna end up either burned or really dry. You're not gonna get that great of a cut out of the mohawk. So I would say just cut the mohawk off. You want to round the corners, and you want to make it as even as you can. The point muscle typically sits very tall, much taller than the flat. And so you end up with a real thick side and a real thin side. You don't really want that. You want to cook as evenly as you can. So,
Take me to him.
as
It'll
much
be
as you
good to see him
can,
again.
without, trimming too much, try and level out your brisket. Try and make those, make them meet in the middle a little bit. There is also the top side, which has a whole layer of fat. That's the fat cap. And there's also a bottom side. So, bottom side of the brisket, there's always this big ass chunk of fat, right? That's called the deckle fat, right? You want that fat out of here, alright? Like, when you're cutting into it, you're thinking, oh, I'm cutting so much meat out of this brisket. This seems so wasteful. No, let me tell you, that thing is one giant blob of fat. You don't really want to be like chewing on it. You don't want that. So, get the deckle fat out of here. We got the deckle fat out, alright? I will generally just take off like the little globules of fat that you sometimes see on the other side of a brisket. I don't think it's so important to take those off. After all, they're like, all things considered, they're rather small, and they probably will render down, but just clean it up. I don't really want like chunks of fat. So I will typically like clear off any like big chunks of fat on the underside of the brisket. Now, when it comes to the top part of the brisket, here's when it gets kind of tricky. When you're trimming the fat cap, you want to leave a 1/4 of an inch. Now, you might be asking yourself, how do I tell what a 1/4 of an inch is? It's such a thick layer of fat. It's not even in some parts. Like, how do I know? The truth is, you're just gonna have to hold that. Like, if you end up cutting into the meat, we call that like scalping the meat. You gotta hold that. I'm sorry. Like, it is what it is. But now you know. Now you know how thick the fat is. Another way you can actually tell is that right where the mohawk is, there's kind of like a valley, and right at the bottom of that valley is the meat. You can kind of measure, like kind of eyeball from the bottom of the valley when it like comes back up. You can actually tell how thick that fat is, and you can use that as a guide to what we're looking for, which is a 1/4 inch fat. You want to leave that much fat so that it melts down and forms a great bark, because that's the thing. When you put seasoning on a brisket, you think, oh, like this bark is from where the seasoning is on the meat. No, it's not. It's where the seasoning meets the fat. The fat will melt down. It will like make a glue for the seasoning, and it'll form a crust. That's the bark. That's what makes a good bark. That's why you want some fat cap. Fat cap is important aesthetically, flavor-wise. It's important. Leave that on. Leave a 1/4 inch thick. Now we're gonna get into seasonings. Now, a lot of what I'm talking about is Texas style barbecue, which is my favorite. It's what I like. There are many different styles. Louisiana, Kentucky. There are different types of barbecue. Memphis, they specialize in these things. Memphis ribs are very influential, very famous, very iconic. But when it comes to brisket, I do think Texas does it the best. And Texas brisket has this thing of like, oh, we only use salt and pepper for brisket. And that is half true. In my opinion, salt and pepper is all that's needed to make a good brisket. But, and here's the but, you should experiment with different rubs. Because what separates like a good and like the best brisket you've had is probably your own personal taste. Like, you know, we got different palates, and you should experiment and see what you like. And a lot of restaurants, even in Texas, Central Texas, where they have the only salt and pepper, they will use more than salt and pepper. They use seasoned salt, which gets around the whole like salt and pepper, because they say, oh, it's seasoned salt, I'm still using salt and pepper. So, you know, you should experiment on what you want. But if you want just a good brisket, then you really only do need salt and pepper. You're gonna want kosher salt. Kosher salt is, you know, is good. You can. It's got like, it's less dense than other salt. You know, if you're cooking anything, you know, kosher salt is used a lot and stuff. For the pepper, you want as coarse of a pepper as you can get. Like,
Yes.
the pepper that is used most often in Texas is what's called 16 mesh black pepper. And you can probably find that at a restaurant supply store, but it's not always the easiest to get a hold of. I would say just get some coarse black pepper and you should be fine. And what you want coarse black pepper, mostly because smoke actually sticks better onto coarse black pepper. When you have a fine like pepper, the smoke actually doesn't stick as well onto smooth fine pepper. It likes to stick onto like craggy, like rough pieces, which is why we want coarse black pepper. It gives it a much darker, much more aesthetic crust, a much better bark. And so you're gonna want to get some kosher salt, some coarse black pepper, and you want to be fairly liberal. This is a thick piece of meat. You know, even if you're only doing half a brisket, a brisket is such a thick piece of meat, you really want it to be well seasoned. Now, once you've seasoned it, you can leave it overnight in the fridge for like up to a day. Past a day, I believe the seasoning will actually change the texture of the meat. So, you know, maybe don't leave it longer than about a day. Overnight is what I would recommend. But to be honest, with the amount of time that a brisket stays in a smoker, you really could just smoke it like 10 minutes after you've finished all the seasoning, and I think it would be fine. Like, I don't think it would affect it too much. It's not a deal breaker. So, now you have the seasoned brisket, you got a smoker. What you're gonna want to do is put it in the smoker, and now it's the waiting game. Now, if you're a pellet smoker, you don't need to listen to this part. This doesn't apply to you, because your thing is essentially just an oven. But if you're an offset smoker, alright, here's where I get into some fucking nerd shit, alright? Because I have fucking downloaded Fire, okay? I could read Fire. It's like that part in Hardcore Civilization where it's like, oh, this book is written in parkour. Yeah, brother, I read Fire, okay? That's what I do now. Alright. Now, this might sound weird, but I am 100% serious. Smoking is culinary edging. Okay? It's culinary edging. So, when you're burning wood, let's just talk about wood, because wood is gonna be, you know, a big important part of this. You've got, you know, perfect combustion. Perfect combustion is when you have a lot of, you know, you've got plenty of fuel, plenty of oxygen, plenty of, like, you know, movement, and you produce this, like, yellow flame, this, like, long yellow flame, and it's just whipping around, right? This provides a lot of heat. However, it does not provide a lot of smoke. That's no bueno, alright? Then there is smoldering. Smoldering is when your log hasn't actually ignited. It's being heated, it's hot, like it's kind of burning, but it's not ignited. It's smoldering. This provides a lot of smoke, but it provides a lot of thick, like heavy, creosote heavy smoke. This is not what we want. We do not want creosote heavy smoke. Creosote is a particle in smoke that tastes fucking gross. It's bitter, it's like acidic, it's not good. We don't want smoldering, and we don't want like just flames whipping around like high heat. Alright? What we want is the middle. Alright, there's a little gray area between these two that we're just gonna edge our fire. We're gonna like slingshot ourselves between these to try and like stay at a temperature in which we're producing enough smoke. We're producing enough smoke, but not too much smoke. That's what we're trying to do. And so that is the reason why I say smoking is culinary edging. Alright. Now, in my experience, when you're looking at the fire, when you have like long yellow fire, that is when wood has like usually just ignited. It's burning hot. You know, we don't necessarily want that, but it's not the end of the world. We do want some heat, and we really do want our wood to just eventually like burn down into coal and just kind of like produce an ambient heat. We don't want the yellow flames. Yellow flames indicates that your fire is whipping around. It's hot. It's going crazy. You don't really want that. There's another kind of fire. Fire when it's just starting out tends to be kind of like a gray, wispy, almost like a ghost-like fire. That is fire like just starting out. Honestly, I'm pretty sure that's the point where like there's a lot of carbon monoxide. It's good to see when you have just started the fire in a smoker, because you know that's a sign that like things are starting to, you know, it's starting to get going. You want, at the very minimum, you never want to see that wispy, like, gray smoke. You don't want to see that go out. Because once that goes out, it's a pain in the ass to get that fire going again. Alright? So, if you can take something from this, is that don't let that wispy smoke, don't let it go away. Alright? You want some of it. Alright? Don't let it burn down completely. But what we really want is a kind of orange flame.
I'll get everyone
This
to safety.
means like
Find us back
it's
by 9
burning,
and we
but
can
it's
discuss
not
next
like
steps.
it's not producing so crazy to see. It's not whipping around. It's more like a calm orange fire. All right, so that's like the kind of range. It's the fast whipping yellow fire. You've got wispy gray fire, and you've got orange fire. Now, once we've got that, you've got the brisket in the oven. The brisket is gonna start coming up the temperature.
Everyone's
I would
safe?
typically say,
Good. I don't.
smoking at about like between 225 and 250 is what I tend to aim for. Especially in the first few hours, you might even want to consider going lower. Mostly because meat tends to absorb the most smoke flavor earlier in the cook. The first 4 or so hours is when food will absorb the most smoke flavor. And you might want to lower your temperature to closer to 225 in order to, impart more smoke flavor. It also doesn't matter too much if the smoke is a little darker, a little thicker than you would like at this point, because, you do want some smoke flavor. You don't want to run the fire too clean. And so, you're gonna put the meat in. Now, your meat is gonna rise in temperature. It's gonna rise. At some point, it's gonna stop rising. This is what we call the stall. What's happening at this point in time is that your meat is squeezing. It's getting rid of the water inside of it. Alright? The muscles are contracting. And water is being pushed out. Now, in the same way that sweating cools your body down, the brisket is being cooled down by evaporative cooling. Now, water's coming out, it's kind of coating the meat, it's cooling down the meat. Honestly, you just gotta grit your teeth and you just gotta stay the course, alright? You can try and turn up the temperature. It might push you through the stall faster, but it's a bit debatable. Honestly, it's just kind of a waited out kind of thing. The meat is done when it's done. So, once you get to the stall, you want to start checking on the meat. Specifically, you want to check on the bark. Now, when you're checking on the bark, you want to make sure that, number one, the fat has really rendered down. You want it to be kind of like when you push into the fat, that it doesn't like spring back at you. You want it to be like melty, kind of like gooey. And once it's like that, and once the bark doesn't kind of like lump off, it's kind of like set. This is where we get into, do you want to wrap or do you not want to wrap? Now, I have found that I like wrapping the brisket in butcher's paper more. This is a personal preference. There are pros and cons to wrapping, not wrapping in butcher's paper, wrapping in aluminum foil. Now, when you don't wrap the brisket, you tend to end up with like a crunchier bark, pretty much. It's a bit, it's a harder, crustier bark. The downside is, it is definitely possible to, overdo a bark or maybe get a little dry, honestly. So there's that. When you wrap it in aluminum foil, this is what's called the Texas crutch. It will end up speeding up the brisket cook. But what ends up happening is that aluminum foil is going to trap steam inside the chamber. It's going to trap steam, and you're going to end up in a situation where it's trapping in so much steam that it might actually harm your bark. It might actually wash away. That water might wash away your bark. It's not like so serious as that, but it's definitely a thing. Like, you work really hard on that bark, it's definitely possible that your brisket steams itself too much, and that bark gets a lot weaker. Another thing that happens is it might get wet, and it might impart kind of like a pot roasty, flavor. And, there's nothing wrong with pot roast, but if you want a brisket, you want a brisket, after all. So, there's that. Then there's butcher's paper. Butcher's paper is a bit of a middle ground. It doesn't trap heat so well like aluminum foil, so you'll still have a bit of a bark, but it won't end up too dry. Butcher's paper is my kind of like go-to. There is another method called the foil boat method. That is where you take some aluminum foil and you kind of like wrap it around the underside and around the edges of a brisket, and you put some beef tallow at the bottom of the brisket that it's sitting on, between the aluminum foil goes the tallow and then goes the brisket. It'll actually confit it, which I haven't tried. With as fatty of a cut as brisket, I don't really want to add more fat, but I would be down to try this method. It has apparently turned out some pretty good briskets. We'll see. I will get back to you if I do.
Someone needs to save General Achilles from himself. Can you do it?
So with that,
Go inside. Good luck.
let's wrap the brisket, or not wrap the brisket, up to you. You're gonna want to bring that brisket up to, at the very least, around 185 degrees. Now, there's a whole thing about brisket where, you don't want to take it off at a certain temperature. You want to have a meat thermometer. You want to stick it in there. You want to see it being probe tender. You got to be able to stick it in there and feel like almost no resistance. That's how you know it's done. And that sentiment is correct, kind of. The issue with this is, look, there are people out there that say, all you gotta do is reach underneath a brisket and you feel that brisket, you know it's ready. Look, there are some of us out here that are mere mortals, okay? I can't tell the doneness of a brisket by fucking reaching the underside, okay? All I'm gonna do is burn my fingertips. I have found that the point at which you should start checking for tenderness is about 185 to 190. That's when you're gonna start seeing that. Alright? So, honestly, I don't think you should check your brisket all that much. I don't think you should be opening the lid and checking the brisket all too much before that point. You check it to make sure the bark is right, then you'll wrap it, and then you'll check for, whether or not it's tender. Because, here's the thing, when you're opening a smoker, you're letting out so much heat that's building up, that's like making this oven. If you're looking, you ain't cooking. That's how it is. So once it hits around and then turn on 185, you're gonna want to start looking at it more. You're gonna want to start paying attention more. At this point, if one side is just a lot hotter than another side, you might want to actually turn the brisket. I didn't actually talk about this. That's my fault. When you're cooking a brisket, you typically have the point side closer to the fire. You want to face it so that the fire's here, the point is flat. Because the point is thicker, it can handle a lot more heat, but sometimes, you know, depending on the hot spots of your specific smoker, you might have a cold spot where the flat is. You will want to turn that around so the point is facing the fire. It gets a lot more heat. I might die here. Holy shit! My fucking god, man! Like, can you chill? Alright. That's the first near death the run. Yeah, an easy way to remember this is the point half, you point it towards the fire. That's an easy way to remember this. Now, once the stick of meat thermometer in and it's feeling tender on both sides, you should feel very little resistance. You want to take that off, and you're gonna start the resting process. Resting meat is very important for it to turn out well, because if you take it right off and you try to serve it, it's just gonna be pissing juicy, all right? And you're not giving the meat a chance to reabsorb the juices that's letting off. So, you want to rest it, ideally, at a temperature of 160 degrees. Best way you can do that is typically an oven. You know, most houses have an oven that you can use. You're gonna want to just set it to as low as you can. Most commercial ovens either have a lowest temperature of 160 or 170. Just put it at the lowest that you can get it, and you want to rest it minimum, I would say 2 hours. Any less, and you're gonna have a real rough time.
Though it might take a while with all the creatures.
Honestly, a lot of people swear by 12-hour rests. Now, that's a little bit hard to do, mostly because there are certain safety concerns for an oven to be going for 12 hours at a time, you know, so for home cook, maybe don't do that. And here's the thing. I've been talking a lot about, you know, what if you have a smoker? But here's the thing. Smokers are kind of fucking expensive, alright? For a good one, kind of fucking expensive. And honestly, take up a lot of space. So, what if you don't have a smoker? What if you can't get a smoker? Well, I have an idea. Well, not so much my idea. I got it from other places. But the idea is liquid smoke. Now, you've probably seen liquid smoke. I think liquid smoke usually gets kind of a bad connotation. It's usually seen as like, you know, it'll just give you cancer. It's just cancer. It's not. Liquid smoke is not any worse for you than just like smoking meat would be. Because after all, liquid smoke is just those same smoke particles suspended in liquid. It's the same thing. Basically, if you want to achieve, you know, a brisket of some kind, I'm not saying it's gonna be the same as a barbecue brisket. It won't be. There are certain, you know, qualities to an actual smoked meat that you won't get by using liquid smoke. But you can come close enough that, you know, you've got something tasty. Now, what you want to do is before you apply the seasoning to your brisket, you're gonna wanna get a bottle of smoke, a liquid smoke, and you're gonna wanna rub it in. You gotta wanna rub in the liquid smoke. You want to get as much penetration as you can with it. And then, you, instead of putting it in a smoker, you put it in an oven. Because at the end of the day, a smoker acts essentially the same as an oven. You're putting meat in a device that holds a certain temperature. All a smoker is just an oven that adds smoke. That's all it really is. It's just a metal fucking container. So, put that in an oven, set it to about 225, and the same thing applies. It'll hit the skull at some point. Evaporative cooling will happen at some point, and you'll get to a point where, the meat, you're gonna have to want to test it with a meat thermometer, see if it's tender, and there we go. That's how you do brisket if you don't have a smoker. You're not gonna achieve the same flavor as something like an offset, but you can get kind of close. Now, what if you're feeding someone, you're telling them, oh, I make a good brisket. You're a liar. Actually, you're using liquid smoke. And maybe whoever's eating your food has a discerning eye. Oh, there's no smoke ring on this. First of all, the lack of a smoke ring isn't really indicative of anything. You could definitely smoke something and it doesn't have a smoke ring. Smoke ring indicates that the meat has come in contact with nitrates, which typically those are the nitrates that are found in smoke. But it doesn't always occur. A way around that, to fool people, to have a, false smoke ring, curing salt. Curing salt, which you could just buy, has nitrates in it. It has nitrates in it. You can just fucking put some on when you're seasoning a brisket, and you'll have a smoke ring. I mean, it's not a real smoke ring, but who the fuck is gonna know that? All right, for one thing, the smoke ring doesn't taste any different, really. The nitrates don't really change the flavor much. So just fucking use some curing salt, and you're done. All right. Now, I think I'm going to stop the stream pretty soon. I'll probably finish this class and stop the stream. I'm sorry that it's a bit of a shorter stream today, but I'm gonna be honest, I'm not feeling all too great. My throat is a bit rough to, kind of stream for hours on end, so I'll probably stop here. I think I'm gonna try and do Wizlocke streams typically on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd like to set a bit of a schedule for myself. But obviously, if life things show up, I'm just probably not gonna stream. I might not stream this Thursday because after all, it is Thanksgiving, so we'll see how that goes. I might have family things that I need to do, but apart from that, we'll try and reschedule as much as we can. I'm gonna let my throat recover. It's fortunately it's not anything bad. It's mostly there's no muscle ache or anything. It's just had a pretty annoying cough for a bit. I'd like to get over it.
As he loves to tell, fire for fiddle, the fiend of the
Yep. All right, we're gonna stop here. All right. Goodbye.